all thriller writers, and they're not even in the same order on the lists. But beyond that, the lists are different, at least in terms of the books that appear, though I notice not so much the type of books. What are the differences you see? Well, on the popularity list, it looks much more like what you'd expect on a New York Times list or what you'd expect to see selling at the bookstore or at an airport, if you will. Lots of legacy authors, big name authors, and the books are more expensive, even in digital form. That's the popularity list. On the bestseller list for Amazon, that is what's selling best on Amazon, you didn't see so much of the legacy authors. You saw a clear genre fiction, but different names, different books, and they were much less expensive. Well, you can figure out this just as well as I do. Obviously, price makes a difference. Price perhaps makes far more difference than publisher to people buying online, especially ebooks. I don't think most people buying online even notice the publisher, but they definitely notice the price. And perhaps the more important takeaway is that when you get away from print and stores, the power of the legacy author starts to diminish. It's much closer to a level playing field. But what's still king is genre. I looked at every single one of these titles. You can do this too. You go to David's website and read all about it. Every one of them is very clearly a member of a recognizable genre, a thriller, which is what most of them were, or a romance, science fiction. You can tell just by looking at the title, if not the author, what kind of book it is. And usually the cover and the title help that. They support that because covers and titles working together are so important. My most recent blog post on my website is on that topic. If you don't get the newsletter, you go read it on my website, williambernhardt.com. But cover title should reinforce the genre. Some people are now even including subtitles. As you may have noticed, my series, the subtitle is no longer the Daniel Pike series number 4 or whatever. It's Daniel Pike Legal Thriller number 4. As if titles like, The Last Chance Lawyer with the figure of justice on the cover isn't clear enough. Just in case you missed it, here, let me put the genre in the subtitle. That's because they're trying to send a clear message to readers. You hope they'll go on and read more and look at a sample chapter or at least the description and the reviews, but you want to hit them right up front with a very clear message, what kind of book this is, why they might be interested in it. Now, how does this apply to writing? Because it sounds more like marketing, but it isn't. Too often in those small group retreats I talked about, I get people who, they got an idea, they want to write and they start writing, but don't have a clear idea of what they're writing or who they're writing for. That's fine. That's why they've come to the retreat, so that I can fill in the blanks that they've missed. But, if you're a kind of person who doesn't care whether anybody reads your book, I don't know who that would be, but if you don't, fine. But if you're hoping to find an audience, you need to know right up front, what am I writing? Is this a thriller? What should go in a thriller? How do I make this plot something, not just the first thing that popped into my head or some thinly veiled treatment of something that actually happened to me, but how do I turn this into a story that people will want to read? And then how do I make that clear in the title, if not in every word of the book? And that is a writing tip. I always encourage people to write from the heart, not to write to the market. But writing for a genre is not writing to a market, because these genres have been in place for more than 100 years. You decide you're going to go imitate Where the Crawdads Sing. That's writing to the market. Writing a thriller, a genre that's been popular for decades, that's not writing for the market. That's just being smart. If that's what you love. If it's not a genre you read, don't bother. Don't take the patronizing idea that genre fiction is easy, because let me tell you, it isn't. But if it's a field that you know and care about and love, that's what you should be writing, and you should be making it clear what kind of book you're writing all through the writing process. My interview this time is with Mag Dimond, who has just published a wonderful book called Bowing to Elephants, which is getting all kinds of positive reviews. It's part travel, part meditation, and all absolutely wonderful. So I asked her not only about the book, but about her travels, and this is what she had to say. Mag, thanks for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, traditional first question. If you could give an aspiring writer one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I think it would be not to lose hope and not to lose faith in yourself. I had experiences of losing faith and almost bailing out. And I fortunately had people around me in a sort of a support setting that reminded me that my story, was deserved to be told. And I see that I taught writing for many years and in college, and I saw that in students too, that they really didn't believe that they had anything important to say. That self-critic can be very cruel and mean and can stop us in our tracks. And I think I would definitely caution, against believing the critic. You
Right.
don't have to believe the critic.
Who can you believe? Do you recommend critique groups, or how do you get feedback?
Well, I worked with a marvelous group that is ongoing. They do 9-month sort of seminars. It's called Write to the Finish. And the two people running it are colleagues of mine from when I lived in northern New Mexico. They're both teachers and writers. And Write to the Finish, you sign on for 9 months. And the goal of being in the seminar, workshop, whatever you want to call it, is that you are going to finish a book. And everybody works from different places. So it's all done online and through emails and phone conferences and all that. And it goes on for 9 months. And it's an incredibly supportive and instructive experience. You get a lot of basic writing practice. You get a lot of critiquing. You get conference one-on-one with your teachers. Yeah. And it's just really valuable to have that structure.
Mm-hmm. Tell everyone about Bowing to Elephants. Give us the one-sentence log line about your book.
Well, it started out being about just traveling the world, because I've done a lot of that and I wanted to share that. But as I started to write about using my journals, I realized that my family started to interfere with the process of me telling my adventures. And I realized that the book had to be more about the present day, more than that, and it had to be about my past. So I interwove the present with the past and told my backstory, which is coming from a family of sort of narcissists and people who didn't pay any attention to me, and dealing with sort of essential loneliness for many decades and trying to find my way kind of as this solitary kid. So, and I came from a privileged family, so everything was sort of cushioned by that privilege, but it was important that I sort of find someone to witness me. And eventually I found my grandmother who looked over me, and I had a great education and so on and so forth. So the book is about the sort of finding out who you are by traveling.
So do you consider this a memoir, an autobiography?
Yes.
Travel writing?
It's a memoir. It's a memoir. It's not autobiography is sort of a chapter by chapter account, in a pretty much chronological fashion. And this is very much like a mosaic in the way it's put together. The book, it's got a little bit of a travel adventure, and then it's got a lot of backstory, and then it goes back to the travel adventure.
You've gotten some terrific feedback, though. Great reviews. Awards at Kirkus. And am I getting this right? The book went #1 in 5 different countries?
Yeah, the day that it launched, we did a sort of campaign for the ebook, and it went ballistic, and it sold really, really well on that first sort of 24, 48-hour window that the book was launched. Yeah,
That's fantastic.
it was kind of exciting.
And now everybody's going to be curious. Did you get help with the marketing and the book launch, or did you do all that yourself?
I went through two publicists who were not adequate to the job, so I had some stumbling along the way. You know, the publisher that I went with, She Writes Press, they're a hybrid publisher, and they don't do the PR. They
Usual
certainly
case
do the
today.
distribution. I finally found someone who knew marketing, and he actually was a person I had worked with when I was a hospice volunteer a number of years ago, and he signed on to be my sort of manager and take care of the marketing and the PR sort of campaign. And that was quite a while ago now. And we've done a lot of things on social media, and we have a lot of research about finding podcasts that would be appropriate, and
Right.
finding blog sites and so on. So it's been a piecing together of the process over time. It's been a lot of fun, but it takes its time to work, you know.
Well, that's part of the business, at least these days, I think. In the reviews and descriptions of your book, the word mindfulness kept coming up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, mindfulness is a tried and true Buddhist practice, and I have been meditating since the early 90s, and the story of my journey is a lot about how mindfulness practice really helped me deal with suffering and find a certain amount of self-love. And so that's a real strong current in the book. And people ask me about the relationship between mindfulness and writing, or they'll ask me, but how does mindfulness fit into being a traveler? And I said, well, if you're present, if you're really in the present moment, which is really what mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment, you gain so much, when you have different experiences, such as traveling. And it also really enriches your writing practice. It allows you to access really a lot of sensory stuff out of memory and give a sense of place. So mindfulness has been my window, my door opening to all kinds of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
One of which was actually writing the book. I think the practice helped me sit down and focus and give myself the respect and the care that I needed to get the book written.
Did you have any kind of training, or did you study somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I started meditating, going to small meditation groups back in the early 90s, as I said. And then when I moved back to California from New Mexico, I started going on residential retreats. There's a center north of San Francisco that's very well known. And so I went on these retreats, and these are silent retreats where you are doing sitting meditation, walking meditation, and you're listening to talks, and you're eating vegetarian food, and you're out in the country, and it's quite amazing. This is how people become sort of ardent practitioners, is that they do these retreats and they find this sort of place of deep understanding about kind of the suffering in life and the way to avoid suffering, or not avoid it, but the way to handle it and the way to really be able to make a difference in the world. So it was a lot of years of doing that kind of sitting and being with fellow practitioners. It's a training, and a lot of people do it all their lives.
Yeah.
I still do it. I mean, I still sit every day, and I go on retreats when I can. It's made a huge difference in my life. So I keep doing it.
Yeah, I've done retreats like that too, and I found it really helpful, especially when I was first writing poetry. Helped give me like you're saying, the presence of mind. It sounds like it did the same thing for you with this book, right?
Yeah, and also the kind of self-love you need to really see something like this through, because it is, if you can't love yourself, if you can't, care for the ideas that you have and the visions that you have, or the voice that you want to put out there, you're not going to get it done. So you have to be able to summon that kind of self-regard. And I think what the Buddhist practice did for me was open that up for me and allow me to care deeply about my